Building reliable process models. Part 1. Defining process scope. With me, Declan Cheller. Target audience. This tutorial is aimed at people who are new to process modeling and experienced process modelers who want to take a more structured approach. Some questions to set the context. What is a business process? It's an end-to-end set of activities which collectively responds to an event and transforms information, materials, and other resources into outputs that deliver value directly to the customers of the process. Do you think most business subject matter experts have a formal understanding of the word process? Do SMEs consistently distinguish between business functional areas, general areas of business activity, business processes, and sub-processes? How often do business analysts take the SME's word that X is a process and prepare to dive into modeling atomic tasks without first understanding the scope of the process? So let's get started. Business SMEs might talk about our accounting process, when in fact accounting is a business capability, not a process. They might refer to our month-end process, when in fact month-end is a set of processes performed at a particular time. Business analysts often dive straight into modeling atomic tasks before they've even understood whether they're dealing with one process or many. How do I know? Because I made that mistake myself once 10 years ago. I took my client's word that we had to model 10 processes. It turned out to be more than 20 discrete processes, and I had to work 16-hour days for a month to get the job done in the promised time frame. This video outlines the approach I came up with to make sure I would not make the same mistake again. This approach is not unique to me, and you'll probably meet other experienced people who use a similar method. 3 key things. To be confident that you're dealing with a single process, you need to have a clear idea of its scope. To achieve that, you need to know at least 3 key things. What is the thing being processed? Why do we perform the process? When do we execute the process? What is the thing being processed? It could be a request for a replacement credit card. It could be an application that requires approval, for example, for a mortgage. Understanding the nature of the thing to be processed is the first step, yet it's so often overlooked. There should be a central business glossary that defines any key concepts. There are around 7,500 varieties of apple in the world. If you were defining the process for making an apple pie, it would make sense to specify which variety of apple to use. Just because a term is common doesn't mean it's equally understood by everyone. In my experience, when software fails to meet expectations, developers often say, "But it's what you asked for." And business SMEs often reply, "But it's not what we meant." Avoid this semantic trap. Define in a business glossary the nature of the thing to be processed. If there is no business glossary, create one. Think of a customer who requests a replacement credit card. The thing we are processing is not the credit card, but the request itself. Replacement credit card request is the thing in scope. This may seem obvious to you, but don't assume it's obvious to everyone. Why do we perform the process? Once you understand what you're processing, you need to understand why you're processing it. In other words, where is the process going? Achieving what outcome tells us the process is complete. If the outcome doesn't deliver anything of value to some stakeholder, then it's likely you're focusing on part of a process rather than the whole process. Think again about our customer who requests a replacement credit card. The desired outcome is that the customer has received the replacement card. So merely sending the card on its way will not fulfill the customer's request. In this case, we know the customer has received the card when they activate it. When do we execute the process? Now that we know what we're processing and why we're processing it, we need to know when the process starts. It's not enough to know that the process starts. We need to understand the nature of the event that triggers the process. Many types of event can trigger the start of a process. The three most common triggering event types are timer, for example, a specific date, time, or elapsed period. Message, that is, an interaction from an external entity or another process. Manual, that is, the process is triggered on an ad hoc basis by a human. In our example, the process is triggered when we receive a request from a customer for a replacement card. Minimum process scope. Now we know the minimum to set the scope of the process that we have to model. We also know what to name the process using a verb plus noun structure. So what have we covered so far? Defining the scope thus helps us estimate our workload and stay focused. Nothing that occurs before the start event is to be considered. Nothing that occurs after the outcome is to be considered. Nothing that does not help achieve the objective is to be considered. Elaborate the process scope. Now that we know the minimum scope, we can elaborate it by asking, how does the process get from the start event to the outcome? Who performs the activities of the process? Identify the key stages of the process, representing them as sub-processes. Don't get into the details of atomic tasks yet. Focus on the overall scope. Identify the key business roles and assign responsibility to them. Now that you understand the scope of this process, you can either identify all the other processes that you need to model and define their scope, or investigate the details of this process. Let's recap. Why did we establish the scope of our process? To help us estimate how many processes need to be modeled. To mitigate the risk of our work expanding unexpectedly. To keep us focused on what's relevant. And to provide clarity to all stakeholders from the outset. We define process scope because we're not cave explorers diving into the darkness. We need to know where we're going, why we're going there, where we're starting from, what the key stages along the way are, whose effort is needed along the journey. What's next? Watch out for my other tutorials on such topics as Introduction to BPMN 2.0, Structured approach to building a process model, When to model decision logic instead of process logic, Introduction to modeling business concepts. But to gain real skill, you need to work closely with a mentor who can correct and guide your work. If you found this tutorial useful, Please click like and subscribe to my channel for more. Thank you.